Well, it's obviously from the point of view of accounting.
Hmm.
You can look at an organization from you can look at the culture of the organization, at the governance of the organization, but from the accounting point of view,
Hmm.
to represent um, how people are contributing, how much they're contributing, how well they're contributing, and how do we use these resources that flow through the organization. Okay, so everything that can be counted, everything that can be measured and counted,
Hmm.
we wanted to have a representation of that. Wanted to have a capture of that. And
And
then we wanted to know not just the past, how people contributed, but also looking at these things and see how is the project going? How is it going in terms of participation? Is it going strong? Is it going slower? Does it need some help? Do we need to inject, I don't know, something into the project so that these numbers look better, whatever that means within a theory of economic, activity, right? So you try to predict the future also.
okay. And so you were doing some status of projects periodically every month, trying to check, is this project going well or is this project not going well? Because you're reporting to other people depending on different projects. Like there's somebody like who's a client and he wants to know how things are,
No,
or
it's just for us. No, it's just for us. It was the idea was that things are getting complex, and then we need tools, and we were projecting ourselves very far into the future, saying that, hey, this peer-to-peer economy one day might become mainstream, and if we wanted to be a sort of a competitor to the capitalist market-based economy, then networks have to be on the par with multinationals, okay, in terms of information systems.
Mm,
So small companies like a little restaurant with 5, 6 people, they don't need to have any information, IT tools to manage their business. They can do it on a pen and a paper.
mm,
But then as companies grow larger, they need, in order to be able to exist and
mm,
function, they
mm,
require this IT system. So we said,
mm,
you know, we will probably, these networks will probably grow to thousands of people, okay? And
mm,
if we think that this peer-to-peer economy will be a sort of a competitor to the capitalist economy, we
mm,
need to give these organizations tools. So at the same time, we were projecting ourselves far into the future, because we were not just, we always had this plan of developing this peer-to-peer
mm,
economy. We were not just screwing around with hardware in a lab. We were
mm,
also activists, and we are still activists, right?
mm,
In some sense, okay, like
mm.
economic and political activists trying to figure out how to do things better in society. So it was inevitable at some point to start talking about tools that would increase the potential of this new way of doing things of these networks, right?
Okay, so one of the purpose or one of the reasons why you're doing this, the purpose is to try to build tools for the peer-to-peer economy. That's an interest. How big are the projects? Like, are we talking 5 to 10 people, or is it 500 to 500,000 people? Like, how big are the projects that generally Sensorica has?
Um, I would say that you see, today we're running a project.
Hmm. Leaves Blender.
Um, yeah, we are maybe, I don't know, we are over 20 people. I don't know the exact number, but we're definitely over 20 people.
Okay.
And that's the kind of a number, that's the magic number that if you look throughout history, you have projects that have no activity, you have projects that have 1 or 2 people. Um, and I think the biggest projects that we have was between 20 and 30 individuals. Okay.
20 and 30. Okay.
Yes. Um, which is not a lot of people.
Hmm.
It's like a startup, right? It's like
Hmm.
a startup. But then you have to consider that it's not just the size of the project, because think about every project as being a venture. Every project is a startup, and then Sensorica is this environment, like an incubator, where you have different ventures. And the whole idea behind Sensorica is why would commons-based peer production be successful? Okay, how can that beat capitalism? Let's say, if one day we think that society might change, is this a good economic model that stands a chance, in front of capitalism? And so we think that it does, because of all the sharing and mixing and remixing that can go on. Okay, and that's why we created this NRP. We designed it in such a way that every project, which is a venture, is a startup, can actually exchange resources with any other startup. So let's say you have an incubator. Take your classical model of incubator where you have startups. Usually relationships between startups within an incubator, they're informal. Everybody's running their own business, but they help each other here and there. But now imagine that everything that they do is recorded somewhere, and everybody can see that. And not only that, but if they use a resource, that resource is put in common. If I create a new design, that design is shared, it's put in common, and anybody can take it, use it, remix it without my permission. But suppose that everybody can agree that if somebody uses something that somebody else has done, there is a sort of a reward mechanism that is embedded into this system. Okay, so imagine every company in the world now, they can exchange fluids in this way. They can remix their stuff, and there is an implicit mechanism for rewarding each other. So they don't have to prey on each other, they don't have to steal from each other, they don't have to spy on each other. That sharing is a highly structured flow with reward built in. Okay, then you would have less redundancy. Then you have less waste of resources to redesign and rebuild remake the wheel over and over and over again. Okay, there would be a commons growing in between these organizations, and there will be a potential of a power of remix that will grow exponentially, and that would make this economy more powerful than capitalism because of this power of remix. So the NRP, the need of the NRP in Sensorica, you have to look at it from that standpoint. It's that ventures, projects can actually, these flows, these unhindered flows of resources, of people, between these projects. Okay, so we cannot look at the use of the NRP just from the standpoint of one project. You have to look at it from what does it do to an ecosystem of projects. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so here's what I hear.
Yeah.
Sensorica has several ventures in it, and every project shares knowledge with other projects. And if some projects uses something that another project has done, there's a mechanism for sharing a reward. So Sensorica is trying to put forth a mechanism for sharing commons where there's also value that is shared. So not only, so there's, I think, two sides of this. One is like inside a project, trying to track a project, track the use of physical resource and redistribute value within a project, trying to organize, but also trying to organize things inter-project, which is the second part that you just talked about. Am I correct?
Yes. So projects, they don't just exchange knowledge; they exchange a lot of things. They exchange resources. They can share and exchange. For example, they can share a space, a physical space. They can share tools like a 3D printer. Okay. If I make a prototype and I put it on a shelf, that can go to another project too. Not just the design, but also the material thing can, if through some agreements, it can flow to another project, maybe temporarily, maybe, the parts that we make, that can be combined into one project can be recombined into something else. So there is also a sort of a coordination in terms of design for interoperability and compatibility. Okay, so you share resources, you share designs, and you also share standards. So the whole thing is to increase the power of that remix. That's the whole thing. From an economic standpoint, you would say, let's create an advantage that was not there before. Competitive capitalism, there's a lot of waste because people are redesigning and reinventing the wheel every time. They're spending too much energy to rebuild the same capacities. Okay, and if you want to beat that system, which is wasteful, let's make sure that there's a lot of sharing, there's a lot of remixing that goes on, and let's make a tool to make that happen in a very orderly fashion, so that the urge to compete or to hide or to it's taken away by this tool that guarantees gives you a security that your stuff that you made, you don't have to jump on it and protect it with your body, because you are in an environment that you are recognized for what you do. So there is no need to compete, there is no need to protect, there is no need to keep secret, there is no need to protect yourself. Okay, so just let it out there, and the system takes care of it, takes care of you as a creator. You see? So that's the whole so when you look at the tool, we have to talk about the vision and the economic model that we're building. Yeah. And it's much larger than just one company. It's not just an atomic thing. It's a tool for ecosystems. If you want to describe it, okay, is a tool for ecosystems that takes care of what happens in between. It's a bit like the blockchain. The value of the blockchain is not, you have an organization, you want to use blockchain internally, it's going to be too expensive for nothing, But the blockchain, the value is in between entities that don't trust each other, right? So that's the value of this technology. So the NRP, the value of this tool is what happens in between projects or in between ventures, So one day, if we put that on I don't know, on blockchain or on holochain, that would be, the dream would be fulfilled, right, with the NRP.